This is the Real Estate Power Play Podcast, getting you the information that you need to become a successful real estate investor. Hosted by Mark Monroe, Ronald Walker, Gabe Rodarte, and me, Marty Grizzanti. Combined, we've done thousands of real estate transactions. So get ready for real stories and true case studies on finding deals, growing portfolios, and making money. Welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Real Estate Power Play. This is Ronald Walker. We're here to talk about what to do when do you do wholesaling, fix and flip, creative financing, that fun stuff. So, Mark, John, how we doing, guys?
Hey, how you doing, Ronnie?
Doing good. Both of you guys got new backdrops.
This is part of the Zoom profile.
The Zoom it's all just it's just one of those overlays, right?
I'm actually in Portugal right now on the beach, if you can believe that.
Nice. And Mark, you've got a good backdrop there.
Yeah, I'm in the lobby bar here in Lisbon. So still here for a few more days, and so it's a little different. I was going to do it in the room, but she just came back from shopping. She goes, "Get out of the room." So I'm like, "All right, I'll try to find another place."
There we go. So you found the little lobby area. I like that.
We did.
Nice. Well, guys, let's hop back right in. So I want to talk about today wholesaling, fix and flip, creative financing strategies in our tool belt, right? And specifically, when is it a good idea to use them, and how do you leverage your business around these strategies? Are they tools in the tool belt? Are they a particular strategy you choose as an investor to kind of focus on? Do you use it for JV partners or relationship? When you guys think about your real estate strategy, how does that affect you marketing or doing deals or building your business? Anybody want to kick us off, like how they approach that?
I guess I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So really for me, it really comes down to, yes, it's a tool in a tool belt, but really what it does, it comes down to the seller's needs. I always, depending on what the seller needs, that's what will determine on my strategy, how I'm going to purchase, if it's going to be a wholesale assignment, if it's going to be a fix and flip, if it's going to be a lease option, if it's going to be a contract for deed or subject to. That's my strategy usually, but it also depends on how a JV, if a JV is bringing a deal to me and talking to them, that's how I usually determine on what kind of strategy I'll end up doing. And then once we start talking to the seller, really digging down in the seller's needs, really what are they trying to accomplish? What do they need to resolve their problem? So for me, it really comes down to listening to the seller, finding out the problem, and then coming up with a solution. And then I will tailor my strategies, and I'll talk to the seller on those strategies. Hey, I can do this, or I can try this option, or we can try this option. A prime example today, one of my GVs is actually meeting with a seller, and the seller collects Social Security. So the seller's like, okay, if I'm going to get all this money at once, it's going to affect my Social Security. So then what we decided to do is like, okay, let's do a seller financing and create installment sales to keep the payment low enough so it doesn't affect his Social Security. So that's one strategy. Okay. That we're actually in the process of doing actually today as we speak, is actually at the seller's house, just signing up the contract right now.
So when you're unpacking for the seller, right? Because I think that's really good, because you're coming at it from, hey, these are the problems. This is what the seller's going through. This is what they want to accomplish, versus, hey, just this one strategy. When you come after it that way, did you start with, or do you have a preference that you lead with? Or like, hey, this is my go-to, and then we'll do it? Or is it truly, okay, let me approach this as a unique individual, figure out what it is, and then tailor it to them? Or do you have a preference, and how do you determine what that preference should be going into it?
Right. For me, a lot of times the preference is also designed, what type of marketing are you doing? That's, okay. For example, that's where a lot of it, if you're tailoring a marketing strategy for a certain, if you're tailoring marketing for a certain strategy, that's what you tend to lead with when they call in, and if it comes from a JV or whatever, hey, they called off of this type of marketing campaign. So that's usually, for an example, like we do Zillow, we do lease options, for sale by owners in our system. So then we know, one of the questions that we ask, hey, would you be willing to rent the property for a year or years? And then we close on it. So then we know, if they're open to a lease option and or if they're open to creative financing. So that's how it usually determines to me. Then when you speak to the seller, then that usually will open up the gate. And then, I have a questionnaire that my VA goes through. And then based off the questions, I know when I call the seller what direction I'm going to go with my tool belt of talking to the seller. But a lot of times, if a seller's distressed and there's like financial issues and stuff, they're usually not going to tell you right off the bat until you really dig in and find out questions. And then they know that you're there to help them. So you want to, first for me, I'm always listening to the seller. How am I going to help them? And then at the same time, what's my exit strategy going to be in that? And then try to make a few dollars in the middle, if that makes sense, or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of times I may hold it.
Well, and I love that. And John, I think, when we were working a lot more closely together, and we still do things, one of the things we constantly did, and I think you dropped a huge nugget there, Mark, was understanding where the marketing is going before you talk to someone, because they might not share all of their needs initially, right? There's a level of trust that hasn't been built yet, but having a key insight into, this is the potential motivation here. Hey, if I'm going after low equity deals, right, in some form or fashion, or if I'm going after lease options, people are trying to rent, they're looking for cash flow. This is what they are saying they want. Hey, if they're on a tax delinquent list, they're behind on payments in some way. Hey, this is a tired landlord list. There's someone who's rented for a long time, even though there are black swans of situations we're not necessarily familiar with and don't fall into a camp. It's a key insight into where we can lead the conversation to solve the problem. John, I know that you're really big on that, on knowing where we're going, especially because people kind of mislead us, right, and throw us red herrings. When you're thinking about going into the business right now, and I know you're doing some really creative stuff, how do you decide, I'm meeting with this person, okay, I can connect 1, 2, and 3, and I can maximize my profit? Where does that come from? Like, how do you experience that? How do you pull that out?
Yeah, I think what comes to my mind is I lead with money. What I mean by that is my objective in this business is to be profitable. So how can I reduce my risk and increase my profit? And that sounds very basic, but
my language, bro.
Not overthinking it. We used to have a lot of JV partners that would reach out and specifically say, man, I want to do my first creative deal. And they would get so spearheaded on doing a subject to wrap that they would leave money on the table. And my encouragement to those opportunities is, let's take a step back. And Mark hit it right on the head. Is, what are the client's needs? What are the seller's needs? How do we identify what's going on in their world and what's important to them? And then from a consultative perspective, look at, okay, based on what you've told me, Mrs. Seller, we've got these 3 options. This is what's great about these. This is what's bad about these. What do you think? And not being so focused on one particular exit strategy, but how can I reduce my risk and increase my profits and provide a value for the marketplace?
Well, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to ask you, Ronnie, how do you go into it? Why don't you kind of give us your point of view?
Yeah, I actually love what John said. To me, if you can reduce risk and maximize profit, that's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking to, how can I control and then maximize my amount of money with the least amount of leverage and or risk? And I think that when I'm looking at an opportunity, one of the things that I find that specifically flippers run into is that they're constantly analyzing a deal to disqualify it, right? And I think if we're analyzing deals to disqualify deals, we're leaving money on the table. Instead, what we want to do is say, okay, how can we maximize the profit on this deal, on this opportunity while I'm working with the seller, and then back into, okay, here are the options. Here's the most risk, right? Which is maybe taking it down and flipping it. Here's the second one, which is maybe taking it down, doing minor rehab, and just listing it in a cleaned out, trashed out as is state. Or hey, let me do a lease option, which allows me to control but get cash flow, or should I actually take this down sub 2? Should I take this down creative financing? Really, it comes down to one, what's the least risk? What's the maximum amount of money? And then where in that part do I want to contribute? Because one of the things that I think we forget, which I love the idea of, hey, unpack the seller's needs and meet those needs. But I think a lot of times we forget about our needs, right? Like one of the things, it's got to be a win-win, right? It's got to be a win for the seller, but we've got to be willing to do it. And I think a lot of people throw that out with the bathwater. And, a lot of our conversations with sellers start with, hey, we literally don't buy everything, right? And if you're wholesaling, guys, when you're wholesaling, you just need to control and flip it, right? Like your goal is not actually to buy the property if you're wholesaling it. You might have the intent to go in and purchase it and then wholesale it while you're going down that route. That's fine. But understanding what your intent is and what your goals are, I think is a huge step forward, because then okay, my goal is to do creative financing, right? So if I'm going to do creative financing, I can do that in a number of ways. I can get private money and I can take the property down cash and I can sell it on owner financing, right? There's a lot of people I know who do that. Number two is, you know what? I'm only willing to buy creative financing. And if I'm only willing to buy, this is how much money I have to put into this deal. And this is the return I need to make, right? And then once you know what you're willing to do, when you're unpacking the seller's problems, it's not just, hey, I can do everything, which means you're not very tailored, but hey, this is what I can do for you. So to kind of unpack that a little bit further, what I'm looking for is what's the seller's need? And specifically, I try to figure out what the sellers need before we talk to them by the type of marketing we're doing, right? That's why I love you said is I'm marketing to specific needs. And then when they come in, I'm able to then pinpoint, hey, this seller came from this list, which means they have this need, which builds in a couple of obvious answers. However, you don't always know. You have to unpack and figure out further. And so I start with, okay, hey, my two goals up on this board right behind the screen here, I've got creative goals and cash flow that I want to add. I do some type of marketing. And I've got other goals. There's an ambulance there in the background. I think that was you, Mark. I've got other goals, which are cash goals, right? Because we run a business and we need cash. We can't just sink cash into everything. And so it really comes down to, okay, what are my needs? What are the strategies I have? How do I want to build my business? And what type of sellers do I want to work with? And then once I go after those, then I unpack and I apply my strategies to them. So that's really what I'm looking for. And then I think unpacking to kind of go a little bit further, if we go cash, then it's, okay, do I want quick 15, 20,000 bucks on a wholesale? Or can I take this down and make $42,000? Or can I do a greater rehab and make a little bit more? And it's really just, okay, what's that risk versus reward? If I can wholesale it and make 13 and I can flip it and make 25, I'm probably going to just wholesale it.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's kind of go a little bit deeper, because you said something there a few minutes ago that, and something I always look at, a lot of these guys are like, oh, I want to do a sub 2. Or I want to do, creative financing. But a lot of these people don't understand a lot of these deals when you get into it. You're coming out of pocket with some serious money.
Right.
You're bringing the mortgage current, usually, a few months behind. You're giving the seller some cash to move. You're going to have to put some money into the property and marketing. So, that's one of the things, I always tell people when you're first getting into this business, what's your capital look like? If you're going to start out with, if you don't have a lot of capital, start out with a wholesaling, start out with lease option. Right. So that's something you need to take a look at. How about you, John? Like when you look at a creative financing deal, do you usually have to come out of pocket with some serious money when you're doing like a sub 2 or something like on those?
I don't like to.
but I don't either. But who does? But it seems like it happens quite a bit. Or you have to go to an investor and bring a partner in on a lot of those.
Yeah, I think just being ready. There's something to be said for when an opportunity presents itself, just being ready to jump and having a network. I had one of my wholesalers reached out to me this morning for a property that's got a $1.4 million ARV here in Dallas. And he's like, you're one of two people that I reach out to when I find these deals. I'm like, great, send it over. Well, I don't have $832,000 to buy this property, but
Right.
I have people that do have access to that. So my strategy is more, let's just evaluate the opportunity as it comes. And then based on where I am in my business with the cash I have access to, then I can decide, you know what, I'm going to call Ronnie and he and I can partner on this deal together. Or, you know, I can pick this up and wholesale it and not have to take any cash out of pocket. It really just, it depends on the strategy, but specifically on a seller finance deal, that's one of the great things about it is not having to bring a ton of cash to the table, but you know, it depends on the deal itself.
Well, and I think I love that because I think one of the things, especially, so let's say there's a deal we get, and let's say it's a $20,000 down payment, right? To get the deal, and let's say we get it at 0% interest, so we buy it at full price. Okay, so it's a great deal all the way around, but we got to bring 20 grand to the table. It's 0% interest. We buy it at market value. In that scenario, but let's say I don't want to sink in 20 grand into that property. You know, one of the things you can do, and what I did for a long time, especially, 8 years ago when I got started, was I learned about subject to, I learned about owner financing. I brought 7 deals in 1 month to another guy. He brought the money, he closed it, he got it done. I got half of the upfront profit. On the ones that there was not upfront, I didn't get anything. And then what happened is he took the brunt of the financial load, and then we split the profit on the back end after he got reimbursed, right? So what it allowed me to do is exercise a strategy, aka buying sub 2 from a house that was in foreclosure. And then from there, I didn't have to bring the money. I just split the profit after negotiating the deal. And so I 100% agree with that depending on where we're at in our business, sometimes when we start out, we don't have any money. Sometimes when you're 3 years in and things go badly for 3-4 quarters, you have 3 properties out and you're tight on cash. Sometimes, right? Like stuff happens. And then what we got to decide is, okay, based on where I'm at right now, only I have the information. Do I go into this deal knowing that in 2 months I'm going to have $170,000 on the back end come out? Or do I go in and say, you know what, I'm too tight, right? Let me bring in a partner. Let me work with them. Depending on where we're at, I think absolutely dictates. I 100% agree with that. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, real quick, we should probably go over real quick. What is a wholesale? What is a sub 2? What is a lease option? Who wants to grab that? Just in case if somebody's a new investor following us right now.
Yeah. So, from a wholesale deal is specifically like anything wholesale, right? If you buy wholesale anything, it's below market value, right? It's getting a property below market value and then selling it below or at market value and being able to provide a wholesale property to the marketplace. Now, there's a number of ways that you can do that in the industry. You can put it under contract and you can assign it via assignment contract and just assign your rights to buy this property for a fee. That's one way. The other way is you can take it down yourself and you can turn around and sell it to somebody else. You can do a double close, but the general gist of wholesaling is buying a property at a discounted rate so you can sell it at a discounted rate to somebody else who's going to invest in the property, which leads us right into fix and flip. Jono, you want to take that out?
Yeah. So what are you mean just from a definition perspective?
Yeah. Fix and flip.
Yeah. So, a lot like wholesaling, you're buying something at a discount, you're improving it in some measure, and then you're selling it for a profit. So that doesn't necessarily mean a full rehab. It might mean paint. It might mean doing a trash out. This is something I learned from Ronnie when we were working together in the beginning, was it just doing a trash out and just cleaning it up and making it ready for someone who is going to come in and flip it so that there's less to do.
Yeah.
Or it could be a full rehab.
That's good. Mark, what about creative financing, man? This is you're the freaking rock star at this stuff.
Yeah, I love creative financing. Love it, love it, love it. I mean, it's just creative financing is just whatever your mind can do, and just go out there and take pieces and just try to put things together. An example right now, I'm working on a couple of creative financing deals. Land, there's a land property that's free and clear, and a couple of them actually I'm looking at right now. We're looking at working with a seller, doing a joint venture, and developing the land and bringing a builder, an experienced developer in, and just kind of building, homes on the property. Another creative financing is, just taking over somebody's mortgage, also known as subject to the existing mortgage. Yep. Cross collateralizing. You guys have done quite a few of those.
Yep.
Cross collateralizing. So creative financing can go on and on and on. But yeah, I love creative financing.
Hey, Mark, would you break? You said JV with the seller. How the heck do you do a joint venture with the seller?
Good point. JV, joint venture. Yes. Thank you for bringing it up, John. So just bringing the seller as a real estate investor, you're always in it to make profit. And normally a seller just wants to sell a piece of property at retail, whatever the retail value is at that time, and just be on and go ahead and done. But as an investor, what you want to do is you want to figure out how you can maximize your profit on that particular real estate. And this one, it's several hundred acres free and clear. And we're looking at, no mortgage on it, bringing the seller into it. And if instead of buying that property for cash outright, you bring them into the deal, and then you make money as you improve the value of that real estate, getting permits approved, start building, putting the infrastructure and putting the sewage system in place, start building houses. So instead of making, a fraction, stay into it over time, and you can make, quadruple what he originally wanted in that particular one. So that's how you'd end up. There's another, I did another JV actually down in South Florida, homes in South Florida where I'm at, their builders are knocking down 1.5, $1 million to $1.5 million property homes down there. So, and they're knocking them down and turning around and building $4.5, $5, $10 million homes on it. So I went to we had a seller, house was distressed. The property realistically was worth like 1.2. The seller wanted 1.5, and I'm like, this property is not worth 1.5. But the seller knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So went to the builder, and I said we worked out something with the builder. So the property's free and clear. So that we brought the seller in as a joint venture. We used the land as collateral, so then the developer didn't have to come up out of pocket with 20%. And then everybody just joined it into the deal, and then the seller ended up getting 1.7 instead of 1.2.
Well, when you're doing that, and when we're joint venturing with sellers specifically, what you're agreeing to with them is giving them more money, right? Is they see the potential, right? Like this guy, he's like, yo, I want 1.5. I know what's going to happen. And what you're saying is, yo, if you know what's going to happen, why don't you stay in the deal with me and let's do this together to maximize the money? I want a piece. I'll bring my expertise. You have the property. Let's work together to maximize the amount of profit that both you and I could make, because there's enough room for you to make more and me, and it mitigates my risk, and it allows you to maximize your investment however long you've had that. Dude, I love that. And I think that's an example of even combining, right? Hey, I'm being creative. I'm using creative financing, but we're going to be developing this property too.
It's a win for everybody. It's a win for seller making more money. It's a win for the developer, because the developer doesn't have to come out of pocket with 20%.
That's right.
And then we're all just collaborating together on it and just kind of working together. So it's a win all the way around for everybody, and just kind of being just creative and just figure out strategy. How can that seller get more money? How? Instead of like, I can't do it. Like, how, they're all success. Like, how? I can't buy that $1 million home. But how can you build that $1 million? How can you get that 1.5? You got to figure out and think in that type of strategy.
Well, and I think for us to remember that when we're thinking about creative financing, wholesaling, fix and flip, it's, if you look at the trees, like if you look at the obstacles, all we're going to see is the obstacles, right? If we, man, gosh, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? But if you look at the path through the obstacles, right? Like, our minds can't focus on things that don't exist, right? If I say, don't focus on an elephant, right? You're gonna think of an elephant, right? And a lot of us, I make this mistake with my kids, and I've been working on this. It's funny you bring that up because you don't say, yo, stop eating on the couch. Stop eating on the couch. That doesn't mean anything. What you're actually saying is eat at the table, right? I got that from the guy who Simon Sinek, right? It's like what you're actually saying is eat over there, right? Do this instead. And I think if we can train ourselves, yo, how can I make the most cash, right? If you need cash right now in choosing a wholesale or a fix and flip, how can I make the most cash? What is the likelihood of me making the most cash with the least amount of risk? You're going to lean towards how to get and make a wholesale fee out of a deal. But if you're asking yourself, man, how can I get $6,000 more in cash flow in the next 6 months? You're going to be asking yourself a different question, and what you focus on is what you're going to attract, right? As you're focusing on, I need $8,000 because if I had $8,000 in passive cash flow, especially if it was out of like 15 properties instead of 50, like my management is fewer. Man, that would cover my marketing expense, dude. That would be a huge weight off the business. Okay, how can I get that amount of cash flow and do blank? Well, all of a sudden your mind is going to go and you're not thinking of all your problems. You're thinking about how can you accomplish this? And that's why I wanted to kind of step back when we're looking at, like, I mean, John, I know a little bit about your personal situation, but when you're looking at being able to figure out what I need, right? Like I need to blank, right? Like I need to pay off blank, right? Or I need to have 200 free and clear properties, or I need to go into a new market, or, I need to build these types of relationships. What happens is our minds start figuring out how that's happened. And I think when we're talking about what strategy to do, asking ourselves, hey, what do we need? And what direction should we go? And then focus on learning that strategy and going down that direction. So, John, I have a little bit deeper question on this. So when you are wholesaling, right? When you are a fix and flip, my guess or my assumption is that we're trying to figure out how we can maximize our cash that we're getting in a deal. Would that be accurate? You're trying to figure out how much money you can pull out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
When you're analyzing a cash deal specifically, we talked a little bit about creative financing. What are the places you're looking to see? I guess, where are the potential profit centers in a cash transaction? Obviously, there's the assignment fee, but what are other cash areas you can pull money out when you're doing a cash deal?
I think I said this to Ronnie early on. I'm going to have a t-shirt made that says, I want to buy it for less. And that sounds so overly simplified, but one of the quickest ways you can maximize your profit in a cash deal is pay less for the property.
It's good.
Now, how you do that, there's, varying degrees. But really, and it goes back to what we've talked about, in past shows, is getting really connected with the seller, finding out what's important to them, and asking good questions and not leaving money on the table.
Yeah. Well, and paying less doesn't mean less value, though. I'll give you an example. Right. I'll give you an example. We just bought a house in Lansing, Michigan. The lady has lived in the house, I think, for 11 years. She has really bad relationships with her neighbors. And the house is worth about 105. As is right now, it's worth about 70 grand. Okay. She's like, hey, I want $50,000. We got her down. She said the least she would take was 46,000. We're like, okay, well, we found out she doesn't have money to move. She doesn't have anywhere to go. She doesn't know what that transition is going to look like. Her daughter is across the state, and she wants to go to New York because some of our friends live in New York. So she wants to move. So as we're unpacking this, we're like, well, why do you need 46? Well, I need to pay for moving, and I need to do blank, and I need to do blank. So we said, well, what if we gave you 3 weeks after closing to move? We gave you half the money up front, but we bought the property from you for $36,000. And then you could leave whatever you don't want in the property, and we'll just do a trash out afterwards because we're going to do that anyway. She immediately said, like, because before this, the other thing, she had 2 other people she was talking to. She immediately said, I would take $36,000 if you would do that. Like, literally $10,000 dropped off the price simply because of a 3-week period. And she had all this anxiety, all this stress that was worth getting rid of. So it's buying it cheaper is simply just, what does someone need? What's going on in their life? And how can we make the transition? I had a property I bought 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years ago in South Lake, in Texas, outside of Dallas. And the lady called us Thursday before the 4th of July. 4th of July was on Tuesday, which means Monday was a holiday. She called us the Thursday before, and she was like, hey, I'm going to lose my house, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hey, I don't know if there's anything we can do. I went out there on the Thursday. Basically was like, hey, title can't be done in time. This can't happen. Like, you're going to lose the house. And she had like 70 grand in taxes. It was free and clear, but there was a huge tax IRS bill or something. I don't remember the exact bill. Long story short, I contracted the property. I closed on it on Friday, purchased the house. Okay. She was crying. I was expecting, after everything was said and done, to make about $120,000 on this deal because I bought it without title insurance. Well, 2 weeks later, I just put granite in the property. I was doing a little bit to turn around and sell it. I found out the tax was actually in the midst of a foreclosure and that they were going to take the property like in a 3-week time period, and that it was double what I expected it to be. So instead of me making 120 grand, I was going to make like 60. Well, not only that, I'd used private money to buy this house. And I was like, yo, I'm going to lose my private money if it gets taken. I called up a bunch of wholesalers like, yo, I need to close this ASAP. I need everybody here. I basically got everybody there. I ended up making I think I made like $31,000 on the property, but it was a massive risk. And the reason why I was able to accept, or I was willing to accept so much less, is I had private money on the line. I had my own money in there. There was this huge tax bill and there was a deadline. And I was about to I had a massive swing in cash. And so it was like, yo, and I didn't tell everybody that. I was just like, yo, I need this gone, and I'm willing to give it at this price, and it needs to go. And I think what we forget is people don't always share because they're embarrassed. Right? I wasn't necessarily embarrassed, but I was, I don't want everyone to know this is what's happening, but I do have to do it quick. And I think we forget that the value is, I got X on the line. And people are feeling that stress. They just might not want to share it. Mark.
So let's talk. How could you prevented that mistake? How could you pick up on that a little bit sooner?
So in that scenario, I actually, going into it, I don't actually feel like I made a mistake. I feel like going into that scenario, I told her, in case something comes up, that's why I need to buy your house for like 40 cents on the dollar, because I'm buying it without title insurance. What would have been the mistake if I went in there and offered her 70 cents on the dollar, no title insurance, not knowing anything. Like, this was an opportunity for me to say, I can make this happen. But in order for me to make this happen, I'm taking a massive risk. And I, just like John said, I hedged myself against that risk by buying it cheaper. Right? Like, buying it a lot cheaper. And that hedged me against potentially losing 70 grand. Like, I still profited on it. I just expect to make 120 grand. But guess what? Risk came up and I realized certain amounts of risk. So I don't think I made a mistake. I think the mistake would have been if, I could get this property for I could get it for 70 cents on the dollar. Like, let me go in there and offer her normally and take on all this additional risk. That's when I would have lost my shirt.
Interesting.
But
Well,
realizing the risk, right? And then making your offer. And this is where I would say, like, dude, Mark, this is what I think. Like, what's my risk and what am I willing to do?
Yep.
Right? Like, and a lot of people don't think that way. They think, dude, market's so hot, I got to get whatever I can. Like, hey, what's the risk and what am I willing to do? And go into the deal that way. And then, okay, what's the potential profit based on that risk? And I think even when I'm selling to our buyers, being able to show them that, dude, here's the potential, here's the risk. This is why this is a good deal. This is why you want to come to me and not a bunch of these newbies, because I'm gonna give you good deals, right?
Right.
I know what we're going through. Does that answer the question? Does that?
It does. So, how about, like, do you guys, like, back to, the topic here, like, John, do you have a certain strategy that is your go-to that you like doing the most of? Like, is it a wholesale? Is it a creative financing? What do you like?
I personally don't have a favorite. I kind of like tools in the bag. I don't prefer the drill over the hammer. It just depends on what's going to be the most profitable and move the needle in that specific example.
I'm with you on that one. I'm exactly the same way. It depends on the situation. Every deal is different. And then the beauty of it is, like, you can use multiple tools a lot of times on a certain deal too. So that's always like.
So I've got a question for Mark on that. Let's say you're talking to a seller. We'll say it was a deal that was brought to you by one of your JV partners. Have you already run the numbers and calculated based on the different strategies? Have you already underwritten the deal before you talk to them first? Or do you like to talk to them first? Like, what's your process of when to know what tool do you use for that job?
I have a system. Every time a new deal comes in, automatically goes through my admin, knows exactly what to do. He will automatically run the comp report and automatically do a deal analysis and underwrite the file for me. And then that will determine on what, I already know what my options are in every strategy and every tool that I can do. And then I will reach out to my JV, or, a lot of times, most of the JVs that I work with are really good at getting most of the information up front. So we kind of have an idea what's going into it. But oftentimes, even with JV partners, we'll try different strategies. We may be doing a wholesale. Like, we have one right now that we just closed on Friday. That is a sub 2. And now that we get in there, it's going to be a major rehab when we originally thought it was going to be a light rehab. So now we're looking at just doing a wholesale or wholesaling our sub 2 contract to a fix and flip investor. So we're looking at different tools and how we're going to exit that particular one. So that's kind of how we end up going about it. Just communicating with JV, talking to the seller, and then this one we took over because of what happened with COVID. A lot of these tenants stopped paying, so we had no idea of the condition of this property. We finally got the tenants out, and then we got into them. We're like, wow, this is a lot more than we originally thought. So we're looking at just wholesaling it, or just selling our contract off to another investor. So that's how to answer your question.
Good.
How about you, John? What do you normally do what's your process look like when a file comes in?
Yeah, very, very similar. Once the deal hits my desk, I like to do a light underwriting just to get an idea roughly of what the numbers are. And then I like to talk to the seller. So I guess it's maybe a little bit different, but if I think I've got such a strong personality and, knowing my market, if I can't connect with the seller, or it just seems like a no-brainer deal, then I don't like spending a ton of time underwriting the deal on the front end if it doesn't look like it's going to be a deal later on. Ronnie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I prefer cash deals right now. And the reason why I prefer cash is some of my biggest problems in the business years have been cash oriented, right? A lot of guys talk about being millionaires, right? And being millionaires through net worth, which is great. And I have nothing against that. However, there's something to be said about having a whole bunch of money where you don't, like, the way I like to tell people is money is like air, right? When you don't have it, it sucks, right? And so I actually go in and I prefer the cash side, right? We do explore with the seller, and I'm trying to pull out the details of the seller. But because I prefer it, what happens is I tend to overlook creative opportunities and undervalue them. And so now what happens is, okay, well, if I prefer cash and wholesale everything, I don't have any long-term income, right? And so it's like, dang. So that's why on my board, it's good for us to say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? And what's my vision for the next 12 months? I want $6,000 added in cash, like on my board. That's my goal between now and December. I want $6,000 in cash flow added. And this is how much cash I want to make off wholesale deals. And then what we can do is we can slot them and see the progress through KPIs, right? What does that process look like? So when a deal hits our desk, the first thing I'm asking is, what does the seller want? Right? Like I'm asking that initially. And then I'm saying, is it a cash deal or is it a creative deal? And if we don't know yet, we go into everything as a cash deal. And if it's a no, we transition to a creative deal. Right? So in our process, that's how it all looks. Is deal comes in, what's the motivation level? And specifically, the very first thing I'm asking is, do they want to sell? Like, do they want or need to sell within the next 6 months? Specifically, that is a qualification for a lead for us. If the answer is yes, we go the cash route. Okay, what are they looking for? If cash route is unavailable, or if it doesn't make sense because the house is nicer, it's worth more, they don't need the money right now, whatever that may be, then we transition to the creative side and we basically tailor the process to them. But we prioritize cash first, because a great deal of my goals is around the cash side and building the cash systems, because it's just simpler, right? And as that simplifies, it causes revenue. And then what we do is we build net worth and we build long-term finances as those deals arise. Because on my end, what we've done is, it's really easy to get excited about sub 2. This has been my mistake. It's really easy to get excited about sub 2 and doing something creative and cool, and realizing that you're over leveraging yourself.
Oh yeah.
Like, I want creative deals, but dude, I picked up a deal in New York. Like, we have a deal that we're working in New York. We picked up for $415. It's a $1,500 rent, and it rents for $3,200. Like, one deal is going to make me $1,700 per month on a lease option that I do not have to buy, and I don't have to bring anything to the table except for first month's rent.
Yep, I love those.
That's I guess what I mean is, I want good creative deals. I want $450 minimum cash flows. I want little money out of pocket. I want less risk. And I think when you're looking at our deals, or when I'm coming to the table and looking at them, guys, like, what is your buy box, right? When you're going to take over something, like, John, I'm sure that you wouldn't buy everything. I'm sure you personally would not buy every great deal that comes across the table that other people would. And so when it comes to holding long term, what am I willing to do? And then being willing to tell the seller, like, I'm not playing the marketplace. Like, Mr. Seller, this is what I'm willing to do. And then if they choose to do business with me, I can decide what I want to do. I can wholesale that contract. I can hold it. I can do blank. But hey, this is what I'm willing to do. Like, I'd love to work together. Oh, well, I got 3 other investors. That's great. Like, if that's the way you want to go ahead. I'm totally open to that. But this is what I'm willing to do. I'd love to work with you. What do you think? That's kind of how I approach. So I think Ty Lopez, I heard him say a long time ago, and people can have different thoughts, but he said, 50% of what I give is for me and 50% is for them, right? Like I'm doing this to build my business and to build my personal life, and 50% is for them. If it's 100% for them, I'm not looking out for me. And if it's 100% for me, I'm not looking out for them. And so that's what I try to do is, okay, what do I need? What do they need? Can we work together? And if I don't take personal responsibility for my needs, no one else will, right? And they're not going to know what I need unless I tell them, right? And so at the same time, they're not necessarily going to tell you their needs. And so we need to explore that and bring everybody's, what everyone's willing to do to the table. And then if you've got all the tools in the tool belt, hence wholesaling, fix and flip, creative financing, well, then you can say, okay, this is what we all want. Here are the options. This is not a good option based on what you said, but these two things I think would be great options. Mr. Seller, which way do you lean? Because these two would be awesome for me.
Right. And
then, so that's kind of the approach I take going forward and going that direction. But really, I think a lot of people don't know one, what they want, except for, hey, I want financial freedom, but they don't know what that looks like, right? Like, I can tell you that everybody here in this call, like John, at some point you probably sat down and debriefed the last 5 years of your life and said, yo, this is what happened. This is what I need to happen over the next 3 years. This is what I need to accomplish. And these 3 strategies equal this in my life. Okay, who can I help that these strategies solves their problem? Let me focus on talking to them. Right. And Mark, same thing. I mean, you're in Portugal.
Yep.
Right? Your goals are different than mine and different than, I would say, some guys out. People leaving their jobs are different. And so a lot of it is knowing what we need and then taking that and saying, okay, what do we need? What are the strategies? Who are the people we can solve? And then applying those to fix and flip, wholesale, and creative financing. Because my guess is that everybody watching this and everybody who gets into real estate, the first thing is like, yo, I can have financial freedom. I mean, let's be real, right? Yo, I can live the life of my dreams. How do you do that? You do that by solving people's problems using strategies. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight and say, yo, I'm just here to help people.
Good
and
stuff.
blah, 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 right?
Yep.
So anyway, I hope
stuff.
that kind of unpacks that a little bit. Any other questions? You guys think that we're coming, the last top of the hour. Any questions you guys had when you were in the beginning or when you were learning or buying courses or like getting into it that you really wanted to know, or that someone who's either new or 6 months or 2 years in, like, what are some questions that they would have that we might be able to answer from being in it for a while?
Or if somebody is watching right now, if they have a question that they're stuck with, or something like that, throw it in the box, and we'll be more than happy to chat about that.
Absolutely.
That's a good question. It goes back to, what do I need to be in Portugal? For me, my strategy is always, I'm always looking at passive income. I want to create passive income. That's my goal. And you mentioned the cash thing, and that's always great. I mean, cash is king, as we always know. So when I look at a deal, I always look at, how can I create passive income, and is it going to be enough passive income in that deal? Is it worthwhile, or does it just make more sense just kind of wholesaling it off and just grab the cash and roll it into another deal on that one? But I would say, to your question there, when they start out and where they get stuck is, I see a lot of, and I actually was just talking to an investor yesterday. He's all over the place. He's trying to do this course, that course. He's like done lease options. He wants to do sub 2 and this and that. I'm like, have you talked to our seller yet? No. I'm like, you're doing your analysis of process. You're doing all these strategies, but the bottom line is you really need to listen to the seller, and then from the seller, determine on kind of which tool to use from there. So it was kind of interesting how that thought process is like, oh, I'm going to get a deal. I want to do a sub-2 deal. This is the investor's like, oh, I want to do a sub-2 deal, and I'm going to pay a wholesaler. And I'm like, you know how much money you're going to have to come out of pocket for that, And they don't realize that. They just see the glitz and glamour of, sub-2 is the new, it's the best way of going, like what you're saying there, Ronnie. So it's
yeah. That's good. That's really good.
Man, one thing I wish I would have known when I got into it is what a joint venture was. I thought it was just me against the world and evaluating my own deals and didn't understand that I could contact a savvy investor and have them walk me through a deal. And although I'm allocating a portion of the profits, I would have made far less mistakes and went in the hole far less than I did if I would have gotten connected to guys like you early on and spent just as much time networking and finding guys that I could learn by watching them, almost like an apprentice, rather than, well, how hard can it be? And I can't think of the guy's name, but he's all over Instagram. He's like, here's what you do to make $1 million a year. You drive around your town, you find properties that are, have tall grass, you contract the deal, you sell the deal to another investor. If you do 5 of those a month at 20 grand a pop, that's $1.1 million a year. Like and subscribe. Right? It's like, oh, it's that easy. So I wish, I would have gotten connected, focus more on getting connected sooner rather than let me go and make a bunch of money through wholesaling or creative deals or whatever.
I think that's good, man. I think that's really good. When I got started, I think I got sold in a good way. I got sold the dream, right? Of working from home, financial freedom, not having to work a 9 to 5. And I think going into it, I think the right attitude is that's the result. That's not the initial outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I would have kind of put my ego aside and asked myself very similarly to what you just said, John, who are the people that can help me solve this issue, right? Like instead of saying, yo, I need to be the end all be all of everything and have control, like who solves my selling properties issue? Who can solve helping me get started with marketing? Like who's the go-to guy? I think if we can start asking ourselves instead of like, what do I have to do? But like, who can help me? Because there are guys, I've been doing this for a long time, right? There are guys who freaking are way smarter than me, right? There's dudes who know the ins and outs of creative financing, could tell you every formula and strategy. And you know what? I could call. I mean, think of how many times, Mark and John, both you guys, that I've called you and just said, hey, I have a question about this contract. Like, hey, do you mind looking over this? This is weird, right? Being willing to kind of set our ego aside and say, let me ask a question. They'll help me get through this. And realizing that, yes, the what's important. Yes, we want to sharpen ourselves, but there's 3 things at least when I started, that you need to be successful in real estate. You do need the knowledge. You need to know what you're doing. You need a solid network, and your network is layered from, you're not going to have an inner circle right away. Straight up. You're just not going to, but you do need support staff. You do need people, title companies, people who can close the deal. And you need service providers. And then you need a support staff, right? And that's not people on your team. That's like people who support you, realtors, other investors, people to help support you. And then they'll gradually, as they care about you and care about your success, they'll move into inner circle. So you need knowledge. You need to know what you're doing. You need your network. The last thing you need is you need leads, right? You need sellers. You need opportunities. And if you stack these 3 things together, right? If you stack these 3 things together, absolutely patience while you're doing this, right? You need consistent patience. In the comments, they put that in this industry for sure. But if you stack these 3 things together, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to maximize the results of that you're trying to do when you're getting it. And I wish I would have done that rather than rather than just, yo, it's all on me. I got to do everything. Yo, if I would have reached out to this guy and said, hey, I've got this lead. Can you go on this appointment for me? Hey, I need pictures. Do you mind going that? I'll pay you $50. Hey, I got a sub-2 deal. Do you mind coming in and negotiating with this guy? I'll give you a little bit of the profit. I could have saved my time, learned at a reasonable rate, and then probably done more deals. So
Right.
as a wrap up, we got 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left for our stuff. Key takeaways from today. What if you could leave them one thing about this topic on when to wholesale, fix and flip, whatever, out of what we talked about today? What do you guys want to leave? What do you want to leave everybody with? Mark?
For me, I just, listen to your seller, and you hit one of the things just when you're mentioning a moment ago about networking. That's always key. Jonathan, thank you for watching, by the way. Jonathan just sent me a message not too long ago. Hey, what can I do to help? Jonathan's involved, and we've done a few deals together. Good kid, and it's all about networking, and then listening to the sellers. And if you're working on a deal and you don't know how to take that deal down, and you're only used to a sub-2 or a wholesaling, reach out to somebody else and have them help you and just partner up.
It's good. That's really good. John,
yeah, that's what I was going to say, is just asking people the question, how can I help? If I am a new investor and I'm networking with a guy like Mark or a guy like Ronnie, and just saying, how can I be a resource to you? How can I help? What do you need right now? And just being open-minded. If you ask enough people that question, you're going to find that not only builds the relationship, because if people will answer that question honestly, it requires them to be vulnerable, and that establishes it's the building blocks for a relationship. So asking people, I love that, Mark.
I think to jump on that I would want to leave is, when you're asking people, how can you help? Also tell them what your needs are. And I think a lot of times we don't know what we need, right? And if you can know what you need, dude, it's powerful. When you reach out to someone, you're like, blah, blah, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, how can I help? And they're like, right now we've got good stuff going on. And they kind of give you the brief, like, what do you need? Right? Like, that happens all the time to me, right? Hey, what do you need? You know what? Actually, I'm trying to raise $220,000 because I'm trying to have a line of credit on the side. And that line of credit will actually give me the ability to go in and out of properties different ways. That's how I raised $220,000 that I have access to from a private lender, right? Like, literally that specific information. And I think I would say that, yes, we want financial freedom, but figure out exactly what our needs are right now and take our needs, tell people what we're willing to do, and then also turn around and say, how can I help you? This is what I'm good at. And if you can balance those two things and not get too off on one side, you won't get distracted, but you'll also be very focused. And that will lead you into, do I need to wholesale right now? Do I need $30,000 right now to pay off a credit card? Because you know what? Over the last 4 years, I've racked up credit card debt and I've lived above my means. Hey, do I have money saved in the bank and I really want to build my net worth? And I want reoccurring income coming out because I've spent the last 25 years, saving up, but I don't have anything reoccurring, and I'm still relying on this job. It's got a good retirement, but like, what do I need? And then figuring out, okay, how can I take that to the marketplace, tell them what I need, and ask them, how can I help? Guys, that's powerful. I think if we will do that, even with each other, guys, man, talk about how to just take each other to the next level.
Absolutely. We've all done it. We have all helped each other to the next level. Can't thank you guys enough. Good show.
All right, guys. Well, hey, everyone here that's watching, we do this every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We're talking about if you guys have a topic or something you want to do, please send us a message. We'd love to kind of go into that. And then like the video, subscribe, literally hit the button. We'd love to work with you and to help you and answer any questions you have. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of Real Estate Power Play, guiding real estate entrepreneurs to a brighter future. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast or follow us on YouTube at Real Estate Power Play.